Hello, friends. This is Darren Hayes of Pigskin.com. Before we take you to your favorite Sports History Network show, just want to tell you a little bit about some merch that you can pick up that represents your favorite SHN podcast. So far, there's t-shirts, coffee mugs, and even books from some of the authors that do podcasts right here on SHN. Who could buy something better than that, than have the history right from the gentleman that you hear talking about it? But we also are adding things each and every day. And where's that store, may you ask? Well, it's at SportsHistoryNetwork.com. Up at the top, there is the SHN merch button. Click on that. It'll take you right to the store, and you can be representing your favorite podcast and show the world that, hey, on the swag that I'm using, it's the headquarters of sports yesteryear, Sports History Network, and my favorite podcaster, the Sports History Network store. Shop there today. The Pittsburgh All-Stars professional football team lasted just one season in 1902, but the impact that they had on pro football is so very important at the roots of the game and the organizational roots of the game that the roster had some of the top players in the game at the time. We have more on this story coming up in just a moment.
This is the Pigskin Daily History Dispatch, a podcast that covers the anniversaries of American football events throughout history on a day-to-day basis. Your host, Darren Hayes, is podcasting from America's North Shore to bring you the memories of the gridiron, one day at a time. So as we come out of the tunnel of the Sports History Network, let's take the field and go no huddle through the portal of positive gridiron history with PigskinDispatch.com.
This podcast is part of the Sports History Network, your headquarters for the yesteryear of your favorite sport. You can learn more at SportsHistoryNetwork.com.
Hello, my football friends. This is Darren Hayes of Pigskin.com. Welcome once again to the Pig Pen, your portal to positive football history, and welcome to another edition of going back in some early pro football teams, and we have another great one. We're going to talk about our third and final team in the National Football League, the original National Football League that happened in 1902 for one season. Well, this original pro football organization called the National Football League in 1902, as discussed in an earlier post, was the first attempt at having a league in the professional game. Baseball's Philadelphia Athletics, managed by Connie Mack and the Philadelphia Phillies, joined the Pittsburgh Stars to make up a triumvirate of gritters in the original NFL. But just who were the Pittsburgh Stars? We're going to go into that in detail today. Now, a lot of this is inspired by the great book by our friend Greg Fasseri and his Gridiron Legacy, the missing origin story of the NFL. And, just a great book. And we had Greg on last week talking about Homestead. And this is the next generation of what Homestead became, as you'll find out here in a second. The Pittsburgh All-Stars team, or Pittsburgh Stars, the story starts with the humble beginnings of pro football itself in the surrounding areas of the Steel City. Yes, those early athletic associations and clubs that got so many competitive angles going on and started paying players were the roots of the Stars. Now, Allegheny Athletic Club paid Pudge Heffelfinger the first in 1892, and the Latrobe Athletic Club handed John Brailer and some others some cash in 1895, which led to the powerhouse teams of the Duquesne Country and Athletic Club, Homestead Library and Athletic Club, and others to rise to gridiron dominance. Now, we've talked about a lot of those teams here in past episodes, so make sure you go back and check those out in our Football History Early Pro Team series. Now, as this story goes, when the Philadelphia baseball teams wanted to promote their respective clubs on the gridiron, they knew they needed some Pittsburgh participation for their group of pro football teams to have any credence and to survive, quite frankly. You can't have a world championship when you don't have the best area of pro football at the time involved. So they knew that they had one man that could be a strong ally in putting together a team from Western Pennsylvania, maybe even two. The most prominent figure in Pittsburgh professional football at the time was a man named Dave Barry, who managed a few successful clubs in the Steel City area. Barry was a manager of the Latrobe Athletic Association way back in the day, and the first fully professional football roster that played an entire season. Dave also was the fellow that signed and paid Brailer to quarterback the Latrobe team in 1895. Also on Barry's football resume was his organization of an all-star team, the first professional attempt at one, mind you, that he put together to challenge the powerful DC and AC team, that Duquesne Country and Athletic Club team of 1898. The Athletics owner, Ben Scheib, and John Rogers, who was the financier of the Phillies, knew that they could not have a better partner in an attempt to organize pro football than Dave Barry, based on his knowledge, know-how, connections, and organizational success of professional football at the time. Barry didn't just bring the organizational skill set he had to the group. He also helped build a team to compete in this new league, made up primarily of former two-time champion Homestead players, but there were some others from rosters from other area clubs as well. The latest all-star team assembled by Barry, of which by all appearances he was the owner, was his best compilation of talent yet. But was he truly the owner? Because there was rumors had it at the time that he was the only in theory, more of a general manager, as allegedly Pittsburgh Pirates baseball team owners Barney Dreyfus and William Chase Temple were the actual financiers of the team. Remember, over in the two Philadelphia teams, you had Scheib, the Athletics of baseball, and you had Rogers with the Phillies, both their owners. So it was basically a baseball triumvirate that wanted to sort of move into the football realm, see what they could do at that point, in that juncture. But this roster of new Pittsburgh Stars was extremely impressive. Burt Kennedy, formerly of the University of Pennsylvania, was the quarterback and the captain of the team. And other star players included Harry Pud McChesney, Jack Lang, a man named Ellis, Herman Kirchhoff, W.P. McNulty, Doc Roller, and Clark Schrantz. Oh, and let's forget that Bob Shiring was also on this team, our friend Greg Fasseri's great-grandfather, and the subject of that book we mentioned earlier and we talked about last week. Now, the Stars, they kicked off their season with 5 decisive victories in a warm-up before playing their National Football League counterparts. On October 11th, they smashed the Pennsylvania Railroad YMCA by the score of 30-0. 5 days later, the team rolled the Cottage Athletic Club 17-0, and next was an October 18th blanking of Bucknell University 24-0. Their next challenge was 4 days later, as they dispatched the Pittsburgh College 45-0. And on October 25th, the Stars outlasted the East End Athletic Club 18-0, and a week later, on November 1st, they crushed the Cottage Athletic Club a second time. This time it was 24-0. So that was 6 games. Nobody scored upon them, and they were riding pretty high. Now, as good as the Stars were in those games, the initial version of the NFL was one of truly a vision of parity. These 3 teams were truly equal, and all 3 teams were relatively evenly matched. And the Stars split with the Phillies by winning in their first game of league play 18-0 on November 4th in Philadelphia, only to suffer a loss back in Pittsburgh for their home-and-home game 11-0 on November 22nd. In their games against the Athletics, the Pittsburgh club lost 11-10 in the team's first meeting on November 8th in Philadelphia. Now, they would play a couple more times. We're going to get to that in a second, because statistically, the Athletics and the Pittsburgh Stars were the top 2 teams of this original NFL, because the Athletics and the Stars ended up, the first game they played, or second time they played, was a 0-0 tie. So they decided they would play a game to be a champion, to determine a champion on November 27th. And that was the scoreless tie game. And it wasn't enough of a resolution, so Wallace and Company, Blondie Wallace of the Philadelphia Athletics team, wanted to play the following week again in Pittsburgh to crown a champion. Pittsburgh Stars won this game handily, 11-0, and Commissioner Dave Barry announced that the Stars were the world champs of that league. And there was an excerpt from the Pittsburgh Weekly Gazette on November 30th, 1902, thanks to newspapers.com. And it had this statement. They said, quote, "The victory scored yesterday on a muddy field by the Pittsburgh Stars meant a great deal to the team, as by the 11 points scored, manager David J. Barry now lays claim to the professional championship. In the 5 games played with the 2 Philadelphia 11s, Pittsburgh Giants of the Gridiron have scored 39 points to 22 combined for the Quakers. There must have been 5 games played, and 2 with the Nationals and 3 with the Athletics, and each Pittsburgh has broken even on victories and defeats against each of them. However, having scored 21-11 against the Athletics and 18-11 against the Phillies, in every game played, the victory remained on home ground, unquote. So when they were referring to the Nationals, of course, they're referring to the National League and the Phillies, just like they are now. And the American League was the Athletics, just like they are now, only over in Oakland. So, we have an excerpt of that great newspaper article back from 1902 that you can look at, compliments of newspapers.com. Also have a great photo from that same magazine posted in there. It's a team picture, has all the fellas there in their big dark colored sweaters. Can't tell what color they are, of course, but it looks very flashy with the big light colored P on the front of them. You can definitely tell who they are. And you know that they were the champs and probably the world champions of 1902, as nobody else was there to rise up to play them. Now, there could be some argument because there was a World Series of Football at Madison Square Garden that December and early January of 1902, and the Syracuse team ended up winning that, surprisingly, because Blondie Wallace and the Phillies team combined and went in there, became the New York team, and they got upset by the Syracuse team, who combined with another great team from New York State, the Watertown Red and Black. And we're going to be having an episode on the Watertown Red and Black coming up very soon. We've already had one on the Philadelphia Athletics, and we've had one on the Philadelphia Phillies, or the Nationals. You can go back and check those out. And actually, the bottom of our post today on the Stars takes you, if you go to the very bottom, you have a exit to go each way to get to those real easy and learn about some great football history, because this is really at the roots of it, some 20 years before the National Football League was in full swing. So we hope you enjoyed this little bit of football history. Hope you join us each and every time that we come out with a new episode. A couple ways to know that. You can subscribe to this at your favorite podcast provider, or you can subscribe to our newsletter where it comes out every day, 6:30 a.m. Eastern, and you'll know everything that's coming out of the pig pen. Pigskin Dispatch, Jersey Dispatch, OrvilleMulligan.com. Yes, we are all Yesteryear Hub Sports, and hope you enjoy that. And until next time, have a great gridiron day.
Peeking up at the clock, the time's running down. We're going to go into victory formation, take a knee, and let this baby run out. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you back tomorrow for the next podcast. We invite you to check out our website, PigskinDispatch.com, not only to see the daily football history, but to experience positive football with our many articles on the good people of the game, as well as our own football comic strip, Cleat Marks Comics. PigskinDispatch.com is also on social media outlets, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and don't forget the Pigskin Dispatch YouTube channel to get all of your positive football news and history. A special thanks to the talents of Mike and Gene Monroe, as well as Jason Neff, for letting us use their music during our podcast.
This podcast is part of the Sports History Network, your headquarters for the yesteryear of your favorite sport. You can learn more at sportshistorynetwork.com. Hey there, sports history fan. This is Arnie Chapman, a.k.a. the Football History Dude, and I hope that you enjoyed this recent episode presented by the Sports History Network and were able to learn some good old-fashioned sports history knowledge nuggets. I started the Sports History Network back in 2020 with the mission to help podcasters find a community of like-minded sports history nerds, as well as helping aspiring podcasters to start their own shows. We have a little bit over 30 shows on the network right now covering all sorts of sports history, but as far as I'm concerned, we're just at the toothpick in the ocean moment, that can't even figure it out because there's so much more coming. We wanted to create the ultimate headquarters for sports yesteryear, starting with Podcast Network and our website, but we're going to continue to move into other mediums as well. And here's the cool part, because we want you to be part of our team. So if you're interested in starting your own podcast, or maybe being a guest on one of our shows, or who knows, maybe even writing an article for us over on the website. Seriously, all you gotta do is reach out to us on the contact page over at sportshistorynetwork.com. You can be as technologically savvy as a Neanderthal tapping on a stone trying to figure out this whole hieroglyphics thing back in the day. Again, it doesn't matter, because even if you don't understand the whole podcast space, we have a production team that can pretty much help you out with doing everything. All you got to do, head over to sportshistorynetwork.com, head to the contact page, fill it out. That message goes right to me, and I'll reach out to you as soon as I can. But for now, dude, I'm through if you're through.